Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says this NSP cannot change Pakistan's direction. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. Pakistan's National Security Committee has approved the National Security Policy. What is this National Security Policy? Every country has its own form of threats. It can be the internal threat or it can be an external threat. For example, when it comes to India, the internal security threat can be Naxalism, it can be Maoism. Similarly, Pakistan also has internal security threats. What are these internal security threats? Terrorism that is emanating from the radical forces. One such example is the Pakistan's Taliban. In fact, it was the Pakistan's Taliban which had also killed children in Pakistan as well. So the security in reference to Pakistan on the internal front will be terrorism emanating from Pakistan within the fold of Pakistan. Added to it, every country also has external security threats. For example, when it comes to India, the external security threat for India can emanate from Pakistan, it can emanate from China. Similarly, Pakistan also has its own security threats. So, identifying what are the internal threats, identifying what are the external threats, and ensuring that these threats are ultimately curbed is what is this national security policy. So the national security policy will be a document, or it will be a blueprint, or it will be a guideline to understand what are the various security threats emanating to Pakistan, and ultimately guidelines would be provided, and these guidelines will be used to curb the menace of threats emanating to Pakistan. So all the tools that are present at the national power will be used, and it will be able to meet the security objectives in accordance with its own national interest. This will be for a 5-year period from the year 2022 up until 2026. When we speak about this national security policy, its basic objective is to ensure safety, security, and dignity of the citizen of Pakistan. Since it is speaking about safety and security, we have the blueprint in the form of the national security policy. How will you ensure dignity of the citizen of Pakistan? Which is where we also have the economics coming into picture. Only when we have the good economics in Pakistan, when the economy is overall good, this would be able to drive the social sector, this would be able to bring in growth and development. So ultimately the money or the revenue that is generated can also bring an end to the security related threats. So when we speak about dignity of the citizen of Pakistan, it is about providing the developmental schemes and programs, and ultimately make sure that poverty is eliminated in Pakistan. So when we speak about the national security policy, it not only focuses explicitly on the security, it also focuses on foreign policy, it also focuses on demographics, it also focuses on terrorism, water security, economy, so on and so forth. So this national security policy will be a policy which will be unveiled by the political leadership in Pakistan to ensure that there is peace in Pakistan. Kindly remember, as of now, what we have is the general conversations about the national security policy. However, it is yet not unveiled in the public forum. Remember, it is not in the public forum, and the Pakistan's political leadership has said that it will be unveiling this particular policy in another week to 10 days. As of now, these are just the extract from what the Pakistan's political leadership have given, but the entire one will be revealed only after a week or 10 days. Now the question is, what are the concerns with respect to this national security policy that Pakistan is planning to come up with? We have the Pakistan Army. When we speak about Pakistan Army and how the country actually works, Shashi Tharoor on one of the platforms says that every country has a military, it has a army, but Pakistan's military has a country. That is the amount of control that Pakistan's military, Pakistan Army has in Pakistan. So in most of the countries world over, except in autocratic relationship, except in dictatorial tendencies countries, most of the countries have their political leadership where representatives have elected, and you also have the government of the day. It is the government of the day which will control the military, the army, the navy, air force, so on and so forth. But Pakistan is an exception where it is the Pakistan's military which controls most of the affairs of Pakistan. So what is the concern here? We have the national security policy. This, as of now, looks like it is the political leadership and the military have come on a common platform. They have entered into a consensus. The consensus means that both have spoken about the national security policy and they have come to an understanding. This is what it looks like on an outer framework. However, is it actually going to be implemented is what we have to wait and watch. Why? That is because when it comes to Pakistan, it is Pakistan army which holds most of the control when it comes to the resources. Whenever there is revenue generation that happens, it is Pakistan army which takes away lot of revenue, lot of money, and that is pushed into the defense sector. What should ideally happen? You would have the political leadership. The political leadership will allocate the money to different sectors of the economy. But what happens in Pakistan? It is the Pakistan army which takes away huge amount of money and it will reserve most of the money to the defense purposes and multiple other sectors are given abysmally is what is the major concern. So the concern is this consensus, this understanding that they have developed this national security policy, will it actually work in reality is the major question. So the question that is being asked is it ready to listen to the political leadership? As of now, when you look at how the politics works in Pakistan, everything depends upon the military. So in the near future, since this is taken up by the political leadership, is the military, the Pakistan army, ready to listen to the political leadership, which it may not as of now, and that happens to be the major concern. So the major concern is that when you look at the economy, you have the political leadership which may focus on multiple sectors in the economy, but you have the Pakistan army which focuses extremely on the defense. Now the question is, why does Pakistan's army take away lot of resources for the defense expenditure? That is because it creates a story and a narrative that it has this external threat in the form of India. So when you put up an external threat, they would be able to take a lot of money, and this money that they have been using is not accountable, it is not transparent, and they have not been throwing light as to why are they spending so much on the defense expenditure. So the second major concern is that if this comes into consensus, if the political leadership takes a stand, is the Pakistan's army ready to listen to it? Is the Pakistan army ready to shed the resources for other social sectors? Is the Pakistan army ready to give away its power to the political leadership? Because as of now, when this national security policy is formed, it looks like they have reached the consensus, they have coordinated, they have coordination amongst itself, but in the near future it may not be so, and that is the major problem when it comes to this execution of the policy. So as of now, what it feels like is that there is a consensus, but we have to wait and watch whether in reality this will happen when it comes to the actual execution. The third major factor when it comes to Pakistan and this national security policy happens to be its Pakistan's Indian opposition. What happened? 1947, we had two independent countries, one in the form of Pakistan, the other in the form of India. What we call as Akhand Bharat, what we call as a uniform India, was divided, and what we had is two new countries in the form of India and Pakistan. After India and Pakistan was formed, Pakistan continues to be irritated by India. While one side we grow and grow and grow, we are one among the aspiring superpowers, Pakistan is only focusing on India. That is where the major problem is. So Pakistan has a major obsession with India. There have been number of attempts in the past as well. We have political leadership India who had tried to settle things up, but that did not work with Pakistan. Let's take the example of 1999. We have Atal Bihari Ji who went to Lahore in February 1999. He wanted to ensure that there is peace established between India and Pakistan. But what does Pakistan do? It gives us Kargil war. Again, we have Prime Minister Narendra Modi who visits Lahore, and what is followed? We have the Pathankot terrorist attack. So each time the political leadership takes up to mend ways to establish peace, what has Pakistan given us? It has given us a terrorist attack. So what it constantly has is an obsession with India. added to it. We also have the Union Territory, now the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Back then, it was a state. Pakistan always has obsession with Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir is always an integral part of India, will be an integral part of India for eternity. But Pakistan does not understand this. What does Pakistan do? It says that Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of Pakistan, which is not, but it says so. And unfortunately, in this particular process, it invests a lot of money, takes away the money which could have been spent for other social sector, and this is where Pakistan continues to see defense as a major sector, and it also asks its citizens to sacrifice on the social front so that external enemy according to Pakistan is India, so that Pakistan is protected. So it is in this pattern that Pakistan continues to spend immensely on defense at the cost of the social sector. Again, in the year 2019, India came up with one of the internal matters. What was the internal matter? It was in reference to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. The state of Jammu and Kashmir became the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, and this is an internal matter for India. But after this particular issue came up, what did Pakistan do? It immediately suspended trade activities with India. This is where the logic of irrationality is working out. Whenever you have a country which is closely associated with you in terms of border connection, we have Punjab, which happens to be the border area with Pakistan. What happens? Cotton that is produced in Punjab is exported to Pakistan. Pakistan would make all the clothing and would export to multiple countries. Now you have an irrational logic and you say that trade will not happen from India's front, so you block all the trade relationship with India. So if you are importing cotton from some other country, the cost will also increase. So the profits for these people who are exporting will also reduce, and the economy could also go wrong as well. So the author in this particular case says, yes, the government of Pakistan has come up with the national security policy. But if this obsession with India does not end, if these illogical trade restrictions are imposed, then Pakistan may continue to suffer on the economic front, and ultimately this may also have security implications, says the author. Added to this, the author brings into factor China as well. What is happening? Pakistan and China are like very good friends, but China also believes in the debt trap diplomacy. We have seen this in Sri Lanka, we have seen this in multiple other African countries. Now China is an all-weather friend of Pakistan. There is CPEC that is going through. Pakistan believes that China will always support Pakistan, but this will not hold good all the time. And when the economy fails, when there are no other countries that trust you because you happen to be one of the places where you're grooming the terrorist factories after factories, all the terrorist organizations are present in Pakistan. In fact, Osama bin Laden was identified in Pakistan. Since it is a terrorist factory, most of the countries would not want to have negotiations with Pakistan. In this particular backdrop, since we are focusing on the dignity of citizen of Pakistan, which is based on the economy, if the economy does not go good, if the investments does not happen, Pakistan is bound to suffer, and the national security policy may also suffer, says the author. So in the near future, Pakistan people will have to realize that rational arithmetics, rational logic, rational numbers is what needs to be taken into picture, and the obsession with India will have to be reduced. If the obsession continues to haunt them, they will suffer on the economic front. They will also put in huge money onto the defense sector, which should have been going to the social sector. And unfortunately, if this continues to happen, Pakistan is bound to suffer, says this article. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says state schemes can cast a lifeline to this welfare plan. The article here is speaking about Pradhana Mantri Matru Vanjana Yojana. When it comes to women, there are two major issues a woman can face. One is the undernutrition, the other happens to be poverty. When a woman is pregnant, what can happen? She has to take care of herself. She also has to take care of the baby in the womb as well. But during this particular process, she faces a lot of uncertainty. poverty and undernutrition. If she does not eat enough, if she is not able to take care of herself, it ultimately means the baby in the womb will also suffer as well. An undernourished mother will also mean an undernourished baby, and once she delivers after the childbirth, it is this child which will also suffer in the near future. If she is not eating enough, it also means that the baby will also have negative implications as well. Added to it, whenever she is poor, whenever she is undernourished, what should she do? Because she is poor, she has to work until the final days of her pregnancy. After the pregnancy, she is given birth to a child, and immediately after this, even if her body is not ready to accept the work, she has to work because she requires wages, because she has to take care of the family, and at the same time, because she is poor, she has to go and work and ultimately take care of herself as well as the baby. In order to ensure that she is not harmed, in order to ensure that the baby is also taken care of, we have the government of India come up with this scheme called as Pradhana Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana. So what is this Vandana Yojana? Basically, the government of India will provide cash incentives to the women. What will be the cash incentive? It will be about 5,000 rupees, and the money will be deposited directly into the post office accounts or to the bank accounts of this particular person. How will this installment scheme work? Basically, the first installment would be about 1,000 rupees on early registration of the pregnancy at the Anganwadi center or approved health facility as may be identified by the respective administration of the state or the union government. So the first installment will be given to that particular woman out of rupees 5,000 if she says that she is pregnant and registers her name with one of these healthcare facilities. The second installment of rupees 2,000 would be given after 6 months of pregnancy on receiving at least one antenatal checkup. Then another 2,000 would be given to this particular person after childbirth is registered and the child has received the first cycle of BCG, OPV, DPT, hepatitis B, or its equivalent substitute. So, two installments are given prior to the birth, and one installment is given after the birth. And if she is able to meet up all these criterias, another 1,000 will be given as part of the Janani Suraksha Yojana. Who will be the beneficiaries of the scheme? The beneficiaries will include pregnant and lactating mothers, except those who are employed with the central government or with the public sector units or the state governments, or those who receive similar benefits from similar laws for the time being in force, and women whose pregnancies commenced only after 1/1/2017, and this would be for the first child in the family. So what is the objective of this particular program? One, it takes care of the women who are pregnant, it takes care of the child, it also provides wage loss to the women as well. All in all, what this program does, it takes care of the mother, the child, and also provides for the wage loss as well. However, over a considerable period of time, this scheme is not meeting its original objective. This ultimately means the number of people who are registering for this particular scheme are not able to meet and generate the benefits, and it is the women who have been the major sufferers. Why? Let's take the example. Estimated eligible population of pregnant and lactating mothers in India was about 128.7 lakh for the year 2017 and 18. The target set by the government was only 51.70 lakh beneficiaries, which is only 40% of the eligible population. So the number who should ideally be provided this benefit scheme is about 128.7 lakhs, but how many receive it? It is only 51.70 lakh who receive the benefits of this particular program. So what we actually see is a large scale exclusion. Large number of women are not able to get the benefits of this particular scheme, and ultimately the original objective has failed, says this article. So what are the concerns? What are the issues when it comes to the execution of this project? The enrollment and the disbursements under the scheme have seen a downward fall, which means that ideally whenever there is a particular project or a scheme that is implemented, what you expect is a continuous rise of the people who are getting registered under the scheme. What matters to us is not the output but the outcome of this particular particular scheme and program, but over a period of time, the enrollment and disbursements with respect to the scheme has declined, has gone considerably low, and that happens to be the major concern with respect to this scheme. The second major concern is in the year 2020 and 21, more than 50% of the registered beneficiaries did not receive three installments. So what did we discuss? We discussed that there are three installments for this particular scheme. All the three installments will have to be provided, but the registered beneficiaries are not getting all the three installments, and that is the second major concern. The third major concern is in terms of the budget allocation. What is it about budget allocation? We have the women and the child development. So all in all, when it comes to the women and child development, the budget allocation has reduced, and at the same time you also have this particular scheme which has also seen the drop as well. So when it comes to this scheme, it is also clubbed with many other schemes. So on a whole, when it comes to women and child development, the budget allocation has reduced, and when it comes to this program which is clubbed with every other program, again there is a considerable drop when it comes to the budget allocation. These have been the major concerns when it comes to this particular project. This is where the author goes on to say that we would be able to adopt some of the positive ideas from the implementation programs of multiple state governments. We have multiple state governments like the state of Odisha, like the state of Telangana, and the state of Tamil Nadu as well. What is happening in these states? When it comes to the state of Odisha, they have one of the scheme called as Mamata. When it comes to Telangana, they have something called as the KTR kit. And when it comes to Tamil Nadu, they have Dr. Muthulakshmi Reddy Maternity Benefit Scheme. These states have been able to increase the beneficiaries at the state level. But when you consider the central government, the number of beneficiaries are decreasing. So what we actually see, it means that the state governments have been able to do much better job, but the central government scheme and program is not meeting the demand of this particular scheme, and that is the primary reason we have drop in numbers, because the people registered are not able to get the benefits out of the scheme. So what can we do? Taking the examples from multiple state governments, taking the positives from the state schemes, what is the way forward for the Pradhana Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana? As of now, when you consider this particular scheme, it is applicable only for the first child in the family. But going forward, this should also cover the second live birth as well. As of now, it is given for only one kid. This should also be given to the second live birth, says this article. Added to this, there must be an increase in the maternity benefit amount. As of now, we have 5,000 which is given as part of three installments. Another 1,000 which is also given as part of the Janani Suraksha. So going forward, this amount should have to be increased, and it must be as much as 15,000, says this article. Finally, there is a complicated process when it comes to generating the benefits from this particular program. For example, if a person has to register, she has to give the mother and child protection card, husband's Aadhaar card, bank passbook and registration form for each of the installments, and this ultimately means by the time she gets the money, it will be a delayed process. Some of the applications are also rejected as well. This means the person who is rightfully out to get the benefits is not getting the benefits because of the complications when it comes to the registration. So going forward, if we are able to address all these challenges, able to meet up to these demands, we would be able to achieve the sustainable developmental goal. Added to this, there are other programs that the government of India has taken up. For example, the Prime Minister's overarching scheme for holistic nourishment, which means the Poshan Abhiyan. These will also have to run parallelly, and the government should take care of the women and children, is what is this article all about. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says from selective to universal engagement. The article here is speaking about all the incidents and events that have happened with respect to international relations in the past 1 year. It takes into example the United States of America. What happened? We had the new president, we had Donald Trump, and he was replaced by Joe Biden. So there were policies, there were initiatives that has changed. So India had to adopt to new policies, new administrative setup. So that became the most important factor for India because there was a shift of power from one president to another. So basically, this article goes on to say that since there is change of presidency, India had to adopt to multiple changes on the administrative level. That is what it speaks about when it comes to United States of America. The second issue it speaks about is in reference to COVID-19. The second wave of COVID-19 hit India very badly. You also had bleak images as well. All this meant that India, which is called as the pharmacy hub of the world, was not able to take care of its own people. India had also entered into multiple global platforms and agreements. It also became part of the Maitri diplomacy, vaccine diplomacy as well. It had promised to give vaccines to multiple other countries, World Health Organization, Gavi, so on and so forth. But unfortunately, during the second wave, India lost its image and at the same time, it was not able to give vaccines as promised, and that is what the article highlights when it comes to the COVID-19 issue. The third issue that it speaks about is in reference to the Afghanistan issue. What is it about Afghanistan? It speaks about United States of America withdrawing from Afghanistan. Immediately after this happened, you had the Taliban takeover. As soon as there was Taliban takeover of the rule, what happened? Women rights were not given, minority rights were not given. In fact, the basic human rights was also violated. So because of this, there were geopolitical implications where India is bound to suffer, many other countries are bound to suffer. So it also focuses on the Afghanistan issue. Then the article speaks about the climate change. We had the COP26. Nothing substantial came out of the COP26. However, there were key takeaways as well. What was those? One is in reference to the coal phase down. Second was in reference to pledges to cut the methane. Third was ending the deforestation. Fourth is about the net zero target. All of this was discussed as part of the climate change at COP26. Then it also speaks about the Quad issues. Then it also speaks about the AUKUS initiative. Then we also have the Western Quad as well, which means you have United States of America, Israel and UAE, where the West Asian region, which is usually volatile because of the relationship with Israel, also reached a compromise where United States of America acted as a bridge between UAE as well as Israel. So it speaks about multiple initiatives world over, one in terms of the Western Quad, the other in terms of the AUKUS, where you had Australia, United Kingdom and US come together and take up a security issue. Added to this, we also have the China issue. When we speak about China issue, we speak about the Ladakh issue, we speak about the line of actual control where China did try to enter into the Indian territory. We speak about the recent land border law as well, and we also see increasing belligerence and aggression from China. So the article here goes on to say that there are two unresolved issues in the past 1 year. One, it lays special emphasis to Afghanistan. The other happens to be with respect to China. There are other issues which India was able to navigate. It was able to take measures, but when it comes to China and Afghanistan, we do not have a clear-cut policy till date, says this article. So basically, this article throws some light on what has happened in the past 1 year when it comes to the international relationship. Now let's look into the next article. This article says draft national air sports policy pushes for safety standards. The article here is speaking about the Ministry of Civil Aviation issuing what is called as the draft national air sports policy. What do we understand by air sports? This includes multiple sports. For example, aerobatics, for example, aero modeling, then we have ballooning, then we also have hang gliding, or we can take the example of paragliding or the example of skydiving as well. All these are examples of the air sports. Why did the government of India come up with a draft policy? That is because these are all the air sports. There can be issues and concerns. There can be safety issues. So addressing all these concerns is the major requirement for the Ministry of Civil Aviation. So in order to meet these safety standards as envisaged at the international level, what we require is an institution. This institution will lay the framework. There will be institution which will also regulate the day day-to-day activities. So what the National Draft Policy does, it comes up with an institution called as the Air Sports Federation of India, and it also comes up with associations for each air sport. What is this Air Sports Federation of India? Basically, this will be one of the institution which would be able to regulate national air sports in India. So this will be an autonomous body under the Ministry of Civil Aviation. It will represent India at Federation Aeronauticae Internationale and other global platforms related to air sports. And this Federation Aeronauticae Internationale is headquartered in Lausanne in Switzerland and is the world governing body for air sports. Remember, this can be very important from the preliminary examination point of view. What is the work of this particular organization? Basically, it will provide governance over various aspects of air sports like regulation, certification, competition, awards that have to be given to the sports people, and at the same time, if they are not complying by these rules, penalties can also be imposed on these organizations and the individuals as well. Added to this, there will also be association for each sports. What do we mean by it? We did discuss about multiple sports. For example, we did speak about aerobatics, we did speak about aero modeling. So what they will have is one association for each of these sports. For example, one association for aerobatics, one association for ballooning, one association for hang gliding, one association for skydiving. So each sport will have an own association so that it would be able to regulate day-to-day activities. One such example is the Paragliding Association of India, which will focus exclusively on the paragliding. So each air sports association will lay down their safety standards, what should be the type of equipment, what should be the infrastructure, who will be the personnel and training, what should be their experience, and also specify the disciplinary action in case they are not compliant to any of these guidelines. So basically, in case there are organizations or companies which are registered with such associations, they are not able to meet up to the guidelines as established by these associations, penalty can also be imposed by the association and the Air Sports Federation of India. So whenever there is a person or an entity or an organization, if they have to run this particular air sports in one of the regions, they have to register. So the organization, the company will have to register with these institutes, and at the same time their equipment will also have to be registered, and without registration they should not be able to operate in that particular region. This is taking into picture the safety standards for all the air sports in India. So what is the significance of this particular program? Basically, the draft policy aims to promote domestic design, development and manufacturing. This would be part of the Atmanirbhar Bharat. So because we will have new equipments, we will have new types of domestic manufacturing of all these equipments, there will be boost when it comes to the manufacturing sector. Schools and colleges will also be encouraged to include air sports in their curriculum. So more number of students will get active participation. What they will see is sports activities, there will be competition as well, and over a period of time you will have awareness created. Multiple other people would also start participating, they would also go to such places. This can also result in tourism hub, and ultimately what we will see is growth in that area. So whenever there is growth of tourism, it will also have ancillary sectors where other sectors will also be developed. So creating air sports hub across the country will bring in multiple sports professionals, and we would also have expansion of the tourism hub. So the government of India plans to promote country's air sports sector by making it safe, affordable, accessible, enjoyable and sustainable. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the mains practice questions. Irrespective of what the national security policy of Pakistan may state, people can neither have human security nor a successful economy without cooperative ties with India. Examine. Next question. There is a vast scope for improvement in the Pradhana Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana. Discuss. So please write all your answers on the comment section. Peer review. If you want to upload an image, you can visit our website and also upload an image as well. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.